This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, we get to listen to an hour of Jonathan trying to say the name Latcha as we discuss the 2014 documentary My Beautiful Broken Braid. Welcome to the podcast. I'm PT.
I'm Jonathan. Glad you can join us.
Indeed. Welcome to the show. How's it going, Jonathan?
Good. Spring is springing, so that's nice. Weather's warming up, getting beautiful out here. So
Indeed. I'm going through my usual spring, like, I gotta get fit. I'm gonna get fit this spring. This spring's gonna be different. So I got a Fitbit, and I've been getting fit.
Ooh, nice.
Some running and stuff. It's good. Fun to get back in the running game. So
sweet. Yeah, I know. We owe our listeners a half marathon.
Yeah, we do. Is your leg okay? Can you run?
I've been finally able to exercise again. I haven't gone for a run yet. I've been it's still hurt, but I think it's good enough to go for a run. I'm gonna test it out this week, and if I can run, then yeah, I'm in.
Cool. I found a good one in October in Las Vegas. Could be good for us. So
I like it.
It's but from the internet cartoon, the oatmeal. I don't know if you ever have read that, but it's probably like one of maybe the most popular internet comic strip kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard of the internet.
Look it up; it's pretty funny. But he does a lot of strips about running. Anyway, yeah. So that's so the story I was going to tell about my Fitbit is we have a dog and he's really old and I guess he's like 16 now, and he is a whiny little bastard, and he constantly is always whining at me, and it drives me crazy. So my Fitbit monitors my heart rate, so I was I was wondering. So when he started whining at me, I was looking at my heart rate, and man, it definitely goes up 5 beats per minute when he's whining at me. I get really stressed out.
Wow, that's totally funny.
Yeah, probably not healthy.
Yeah, no, that's not healthy at all, I bet.
But yeah, all right. Well, speaking of health problems, more serious ones than my heartbeat, let's talk about this movie. Jonathan, give us the rundown on My Beautiful Broken Brain.
All right. So My Beautiful Broken Brain follows the story of Latcha, who lives in England, and she has a massive brain aneurysm and / stroke, and that's kind of where we enter into her life, and we follow her over the course of 1 year of recovery. And during this year, there's some serious and amazing questions that are explored, like, what does it mean to be you? You know, if there's a physical alteration in your brain, are you still you? What does that do to the world around you? And how can we treat physically and mentally and emotionally better patients who have injuries like this? It's all kind of explored in there, and also, of course, makes you think a lot about we're all just one heartbeat away from whatever that can drastically alter our lives. So that's kind of everything that goes into My Beautiful Broken Brain.
Nicely done. I like it. Did you enjoy the documentary?
I did. It's kind of sweet and simple, and I'm a little worried about doing this podcast because I got done and I was like, wow, I think I can I think that little synopsis I just gave was pretty much it. Yay, we're done.
Could be a short one. I thought the same thing. I was also had to take notes, and then I didn't really take any notes. I just kind of took it in, and I was like, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I liked it as well. I thought it was cool. There's a lot of cool stuff they did with trying to help us understand the way she's experiencing the world. A lot of weird kind of visual effects they did to try to demonstrate that. And she was I think she was credited as one of the directors, so I'm sure she was involved in I would have liked to see the behind the scenes of that process, of her being no, that's not what it looks like. You gotta make it more blurry or whatever. I don't know. Well, I'm curious about the process of how they came about with those effects to show us what it was like.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely very cool that they tried to go there. And again, of course, certainly I don't want to experience it firsthand, but I really would like to know how close that was to, the way she saw the world. And I like the way they did the edits and cuts where it was somewhat confusing at times, obviously with the intent of giving you that perspective of someone with a brain injury. So, or at least her perspective. I'm sure it's probably different for everybody.
Totally. So I mentioned last week that my friend Scott just had a stroke, and he was he's been posting YouTube videos. I'll link to them below because they're really good. Like they're like insanely honest. Like he's insanely honest in his YouTube videos. Like he talks about like his struggles going to the bathroom and like things like he's really, really open and honest, but he's a super funny guy. He always says he's 5'22". And he's like really just really huge dude. And he talks about it. But like what happened to him is like similar to what happened to Latja in that like they always talk about if you have a stroke, like, you know, early detection is the key and you gotta you know, get called 911 immediately if you see any of the signs, and the whole fast thing about the signs to look for and all that stuff. But like in both these cases, I don't know if there's much they could have really done. Like in Scott's case, he just like got up for a glass of water in the middle of the night and like just like fell over on the floor in the kitchen, and he just kind of had to wait till someone eventually came and found him or whatever a few hours later. So it's not like he could have.
Right, and certainly in her case, she was sleeping. I mean, she like literally woke up to massive pain in her head. It was too, you know, and she at that point was unable, as it sounds like Scott was, to get help. I mean, I guess she did, but she couldn't have dialed the phone, you know.
All right, and she was like, that was crazy. The documentary, like, she was like, apparently, like it was very different from my friend Scott, who he was like very mentally it doesn't seem like he's changed much, but he's like has tons of physical problems. Like he can't really move the left side of his body very well. But with her, it seemed like it was like the opposite, where her physical functions were mostly okay, but she was more, you know, the cognitive stuff. So she was just like running around being crazy and out of control, and not sure what to do with herself, and just confused and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously, how terrifying would that be when you're, because it seemed like her body was, like you said, capable, but certainly like during the stroke part, if her whole apartment was like all turned around and destroyed, it was just her, you know, whatever was left of her conscious at the time, trying to get help and just running around crashing into stuff. And that's I was shocked though. Even like 1 week out, she was really like, I thought it was going to be way, when they talked about like how she was on the verge of death and this massive hemorrhage, and you know, and she right away, like, I mean, you saw her 1 week later and she could communicate. I mean, like obviously she was impaired, but still could communicate to a really high degree.
Totally. That's I'm sure that's what it's got to be like the most frustrating about it, because you can tell she's basically there mentally. She just like sometimes like just can't, you know, can't think of her words, or can't, you know, focus, or whatever the case might be. It's got to be insanely frustrating, I'm sure.
Right, and like to lose the ability to read like she did, where you know, just all of a sudden the letters just don't make sense. You know, it'd be pretty freaky.
Yeah, being a big reader, I was like, I wanted them to spend 30 more minutes on that and be like, okay, what about audiobooks? Could you do audiobooks? Like, how's she going to consume her fiction? This is highly upsetting to me. What are we going to do here? Yeah, but what was I going to say just before that?
Yeah, she was a big reader too, so that would have been a big hit for her.
Totally. So when she was good,
I was going to say my wife probably wouldn't have noticed she couldn't read for about 4 or 5 months, and then
yeah, it was one thing I was thinking though, like when she was going through that whole thing. I can't remember when it was, but she was basically talking about how, boy, it sure sucks to like be in the hospital, and like not too long ago I was just like an independent person, and now I'm counting on people for everything. For a minute I was thinking, man, that was super suck. I'm really glad that I don't have that. And then I started thinking, you know what? Someday I probably will have that, and someday we all will probably go through that. And so it's probably good to think about that kind of stuff, you know. And yeah, eventually we'll all probably be there, unless we just drop dead in an instant heart attack or something like that. But you know, eventually we'll all lose all of our you know, independence and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer to think about, but I mean, maybe that's why nobody thinks about it. And maybe if we did though, you know, I mean, not that you want to dwell on it, I suppose, too much at our age, because the odds are it's going to be quite a ways off. But you know, I guess it's, I don't know, does it beat the alternative? Would you rather have the get hit by a Mack truck, you know, at 65, or would you like to make it to 95, but have those last 3 or 4 years of total dependence on other people.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Like I think it all depends on how you can adjust to that whole like in a certain way losing your dignity kind of thing. Like there's a song by a singer I like named Jason Isbell, and he has a song about cancer, and the line is "No one dies with dignity." I thought that was a good line, but I mean, yeah, at the end, like how eventually we're all going to be at that point where someone's wiping our butts or whatever. Like, just kind of like
Right.
yeah, like how are you personally going to respond to that or whatever? So,
Right. That's pretty tough, especially if you've lived a life of power or of
right,
privilege, which a lot of people in the US have, to go from that
sure.
to somebody wiping your butt because you can't do it yourself. That's
Yeah,
pretty,
especially like, and even beyond like the wiping your butt stuff, like the like guys like us who are like you said, like in somewhat of a I would not say we're powerful positions, but
no, but
we're like that would be weird to be in a nursing home and like have all these people 20-year-old girls or whatever like talking basically super condescending to you, and everyone just like looking at you like you're you know
right, right. What a shift. Like, and I think that would be the harder part of it to me, because now, yeah, I mean, not like we're senators or anything like that, but certainly like command respect in a lot of different situations, and that's a big part of me. And like, I would be a liar if I said that wasn't like a big part of my ego and self perception, is that when I'm in my playing field, I can walk into the room and be respected,
right.
and to like totally, yeah, and then to have some punk kid just be like, look at me like a yeah, that would be pretty tough pill to
Well, come on,
swallow.
Mr. Butterkey, we got
Right.
after
Take
breakfast.
these
Come on.
pills, make sure
Right.
you swallow all of them. Did you get them all? Like, yeah, that'd be pretty tough.
Yeah. You wonder why old people are crabby.
Yeah, that makes me
That's
pretty
fun.
crabby pretty quick. Yeah, especially when they're like, oh, I remember when when 80 people answered to me and did all
Right.
that.
Yep. And then you like try to tell stories about your youth and your glory days, and all the kids are rolling their eyes or whatever. Oh, listen to
All
Grandpa
right.
Jonathan. This has been Depression
Interesting.
Cast.
Yeah, yeah. This is. I hope everybody out there takes the flips out of it and enjoys today. Maybe
Yes, indeed.
that's.
We all need to read more David Lynch, I think, is the key to coming to
Yep.
acceptance with this.
I've never read anything by David Lynch. I've seen a couple of his films, so
Yeah, I don't know. Seemed a little intense from what we saw.
yeah,
I guess also from his films, he seemed intense.
yeah. Also from his films, he seems pretty intense and a little out there. So
Yeah.
apparently, he's a bit of a thinker.
Right.
So the other question, the other thing that I kept thinking about, like the biggest moment in this documentary for me was what makes us us? Because I would certainly have said you're conscious. You know what I mean? Like your thoughts, and that's what makes you you. I mean, if you lose an arm, you're still you. You're just you with one less arm. But like this, she was still her, but it's certainly what I would consider a different version of her. I think she mentions that exact phrase a couple times. What makes us us? I mean, she was still Latya,
Right.
but not the same Latya. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I remember like so for listeners or whatever, my mom had a brain injury when I was like 16. She was like, I guess she would have been like 42 or so at that time. And she had some complications from pneumonia, and her brain stopped for like 15 minutes. So she like kind of went through a similar thing where she was going through rehab and stuff. And I do remember that from like her, as like watching her like personality reemerge was cool. And like even though she was wildly impaired, she was like had the same kind of like sense of humor and stuff like that. So there was some of still that same person in there for sure. It's like almost like it was fighting to get out though. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of fascinating statement, especially in your mom's case, because I mean, like Latya was there, like mostly there when like a week later. You know what I mean? Like you
Right.
said, she couldn't find words. She couldn't, like, obviously she had been a much more, you know, I don't know if intelligence is the right word, but obviously, she could communicate like an average person anyway. But with your mom, she came out really, really impaired. Like,
Right.
I mean, like where it was like everything was like a milestone. Where it was like, oh, she's brain dead, and they were like, well, maybe not quite brain dead, and
Right.
then but she'll never talk, certainly, never, and
Yeah,
then like, but
when she was able to start swallowing, that was like a big deal. She's like, "Oh,
right,
I
yeah,
swallow."
yeah. So I mean, like, so there was nothing there essentially from was the baseline of th- her injury,
Right.
and then got all the way back to herself, and the fact that she came back to the same, like, why didn't she come back completely different? She
Right.
started from scratch. She could have come back like with a completely different personality. She didn't. She can't. She was still her in there.
Right.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no answer, but this is definitely an interesting question. Where are we? We're in there somewhere.
Yeah, we're in there somewhere. I don't know. And
There's a super crazy book, well, a series of books by Oliver Sacks. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he wrote. Did you ever see that movie Awakenings with Robin Williams? Where
yeah.
it's like, okay, so he wrote that book. He was a neurologist, and he wrote just a ton of like a bunch of crazy books. I think the most famous one is the uh, the man who mistook his wife for a hat. There's like all these crazy like neurological conditions that he encountered in his time as a neurologist, and yeah, there's lots of crazy ones where like people like there's one dude who just didn't recognize his wife, and like every time I saw his wife was like it's like, no, you're an imposter or whatever kind of thing. But everything else was totally normal. But like after he had this brain injury, he just would not believe his wife was like who she said she was. He was like, no, she's like an exact duplicate kind of imposter kind of thing. And like there's all these those books are just full of all kinds of crazy stories like that raise all those kind of questions of like who are we, what's going on, but highly recommend checking it out. And he just died, and he wrote, like, he knew he was dying, and he wrote a book about like I'm dying, and this is like my thoughts on dying. A super fascinating little book about his experience basically coming to terms with dying after like spending his life saving people from all these crazy neurological disorders.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm fascinated by that. That sounds amazing, but I don't know. Like, maybe there's some knowledge I don't want to know. Maybe there's some things I don't want to think about before I get to it. I don't know.
Right. I also read something recently that was about death row inmates, and they were talking about how they'd studied like the last words and the final statements of all these death row inmates, and like the crazy thing they found was that like the vast majority of them were like incredibly positive. Like they all included stuff, or the vast majority of them at least included stuff like, I just want everyone to know like I'm okay with this, and like that kind of thing or whatever. And like the article I read was like basically speculating that like that's kind of like a defense mechanism we have within us, is like if we know for a long enough period of time that we're going to die, like we kind of come to terms with it, and we also like give it a lot of like importance and weight. Like our life means something. Like all those statements were like, yeah, I just want, they're talking about what they wanted to change in the world because of their circumstance kind of thing. So
Interesting.
I
Huh.
don't know. So I guess it's good to know that if we know we're dying, we can like, handle it.
Yeah, that was one little side note that I did want to mention about this, or at least that made me remember it, is that so I mean, like, obviously I would say that one of the worst things, like if you gave anybody like, said, hey, guess what, like next week you're gonna have a brain aneurysm, it's gonna affect you drastically, it'll take at least a year to recover from, which you will never fully recover from, and you're gonna lose, the ability to read and take care of yourself for a large portion of that year. You would lose. I mean, like, think how freaked out you would be if somebody told you that. That would be like the most horrifying thing, and you would just like be, I would assume, just going nuts.
Right.
And that's exactly what she went through, and coming out quickly on the other side while she was still in treatment, had a pretty darn positive attitude and seemed to be like a pretty well-adjusted person. And by the end of the year, I think she would have said, like, I would love to see the question posed to her, is like, what do you think about the experience now that she's gone through it? And my guess is that she would be like, I'm a better, stronger person for it, or I'm a different version of myself, but I've learned so much and become such a better thing. I just find that fascinating, that the things that like scare us completely, and maybe rightfully so, and that's a pretty freaky thing,
Right.
still we end up better off and more positive at the end of it.
Right.
So,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess most people who go through something terrible kind of have that outlook on the other side of it for the most part, which is a good
yeah,
thing.
and honestly, it's probably true. I mean, like from all the really hard, bad things that have happened in my life, I always come out the other side thinking like, yeah, I'm better now. I'm a little wiser, a little like, a little more level-headed. Like I feel better about myself and the world around me, like through all the bad stuff. So maybe we just need to have more bad stuff happen to us.
All right. Maybe so. That's going back to the Barclay Marathon. We need more pain.
That's it. A little more pain.
Did you, by the way, like, I can't remember if they said in the documentary because I didn't remember, so I looked it up. But do you recall how old she was? Or do you want to take a guess?
Well, she tries to guess her age or say her age in the documentary, and I think she says she's 28, and then she corrects herself and says she's like 32. So, but both of those numbers could have been ridiculous because she's
right. Yeah, she was 30. She was 34.
At 34. Okay.
And that I thought she looked younger than that. So
yeah, when you first saw her, I thought she was really young, but then she mentioned that, and then I don't know.
Speaking of, they had my mom do that dumb thing where they had her guess her age, and she was like 25. They're like, nope, 42. She was like,
oh, that's horrible.
Being tricked.
That is terribly mean. Yeah, because especially if you've lost portions of memory, you're always going to go younger than older. Right. You're never going to remember an extra 30 years and be like, oh, I think I'm probably 68. Oh, what? I'm only 42? That's great. Nobody's going
to. Totally. Let's talk about the experimental treatment thing, because that was pretty crazy. How would you? I was thinking a lot about that. Like, if this happened to a loved one, like if this happened to like your wife or something like that, how open would you like? That's a big risk, man. Doing those experimental treatments. I don't know. How would you feel about it?
I would probably be inclined to go with something like that if somebody could present a really good argument, because like, which in this case, like just being honest, I would probably be inclined. I'm pretty, I have a pretty high level of risk tolerance in life in general. So like I would, if somebody told me, oh, there's a small risk factor, or there's a medium risk factor, but it's shown really promising results, and here's what we're doing, why it's going to work great, I'd probably be like, yeah, let's do this. Which now, in her case, maybe that was a horrible decision. And that was like the freaking thing too, is they never knew if the seizures were caused by the experimental treatment. Would that have happened anyway? Especially because their brother comes back and he's like, I think it was 1 in 5, 20% of people in her condition have, serious seizures in the aftermath of their recovery. So, I mean, like, who the hell knows? I mean, like, it's fairly likely, 20%.
Sure.
Yeah. Or she could have been in the 80%, and that experiment just screwed her.
And that was an interesting scene too with the doctor or whatever after she had her seizure and stuff, where the doctor was like, well, we don't want to exclude people like who have a chance of having seizures. And she was like, well, wait, wouldn't you want to exclude those people? And they're kind of going back and forth. It was an interesting scene.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was glad that they went back to him and didn't just like instantly like completely write it off, and they gave him, somewhat of the benefit of the doubt. I mean, obviously they stopped her, right? They did stop everything after that, and they did say they were going to stop people that had her same condition. But they're, from being involved in the experiment. But it did sound like that doctor was the odd man out. He was like the one that was like, no, we should still include people like her. And
all right,
because he said he mentions like there's a board of people, and I got the impression he was the odd man out of that board.
Right. Yeah. So then at the end, she's like, it was kind of abrupt actually. Like it seemed like to me like suddenly she was like hiking in a mountain or something. It's like, oh man, she should she be doing this. Let's go out here. But I mean, it's cool. I guess that I think there was a certain amount of time later. I don't know what it was, but she was kind of ended with her being like more peace and she's doing meditating and she got to hang out with David Lynch and get him to produce her documentary and stuff like that. So she seems to be doing good.
Yeah, she got married at the end, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. So yeah, so I guess she's all better.
Yeah.
Or I would assume that the brain is so amazing. I mean, like the fact that it can just heal, just get better.
Right.
Rebuild pathways and all that stuff to allow her to carry on with a normal life. I would have been nervous hiking on the edge of those mountains though with the seizure disorder, but
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess on the other hand, can't just crawl in a cave and wait around,
Right. Yeah, and she it's so interesting because like the whole time, even when she was like you said, when she was just a week out, she seemed like she was very mentally there. She was just having a hard time getting her words out and connecting things. So
yeah,
crazy. So from this documentary, is there anything that you personally take away? Like you're like, oh man, I really gotta. This made me think about my life in a different way, or anything like that, or any of those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, my biggest thing is like now I question what is me, like,
Right.
what makes me me? Is there, I don't know, and I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know either.
Did you take anything away? Are you gonna go climb a mountain tomorrow? Because
no, like I don't think it's what I don't think it's what they meant for me to take away. But like really, the biggest thing I did take away was that whole thing about that I was thinking, man, someday I'm going to be in that situation or whatever. Everyone's going to be in that kind of type of situation someday. That was the biggest takeaway from it. I'm sure that's not what they're going for. They're going for kind of a hopeful ending, but
sure. Yeah. I think you're the odd. Yeah, you take away some weird stuff from from movies and documentaries from time to time. I think 99 out of 100 people would have gone with something else. But
indeed. So yeah, anything else on my beautiful broken mind?
No, it's I think that's it. I think we it's a really simple, sweet documentary. So but I don't think there's a ton you can say about it. It's very face value for the most majority, biggest parts of it. Also, I got the impression that Latya has done her fair share of drugs. I love that because she's like, that kind of struck me as cute and kind of funny. It's like when she's trying to describe what it's like, to someone else, is that she's like, it's like tripping. It's like, it's like essentially it's like when you're doing hallucinogens. So
right. Yeah. So not sure if she could be watching this. Who knows? Or listening to this.
She could.
I found your story inspiring, in spite of what I just said. Making me wonder about the hospital thing. Overall, like I'm glad I watched it. And it was. It's cool to see her come back from that. And honestly, it was like a lot of like I was really impressed with her just determination. Like, can you imagine like doing the shit she had to do where you just have to like repeat the word like for an hour a day or whatever? Oh man, that'd be
right.
That'd be super.
No, yeah. I think that we should totally give a big shout out to Latya because super awesome person. I'm sure she was probably really, a really cool person. She seemed like from everything they showed, she was a really cool person prior to it. She was obviously a really strong and amazing person to go through the whole thing. It was very cool that she shared that journey with all of us. So
totally. And I was reading on IMDb that like she contacted the director of this documentary like a few days after her stroke or whatever. Like it's kind of crazy. Like who would think if you had a stroke, like who would think of like contacting a documentary filmmaker? Which I guess.
Wow. Yeah, she would. Yeah, that's cool.
So.
I wish they would have thrown that out there because that's really cool.
Cool. All right. So Elton, how many stars are you going to give this documentary?
I'm going to give it 4.
Nice. I'm going to give it 4.001 just to
you price is writing bastard.
That's right. No, I'll go for as well. That was good. It's
Very cool.
definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, are you ready for your picks for next time?
Let's hear them.
Okay, 1 second while I bring them up. All right, so for next time, the category is called "It's an Honor to Be Nominated." So these are 3 documentaries that were nominated for the Oscar this year that we haven't watched. The only 3 we haven't watched. And they're all on Netflix now. So here we go. Oh shit! I gotta bring up Netflix. First one is Cartel Land. That's I'm just gonna go by memory. That's the one about the people fighting cartels in Mexico. Not a very official description, but there you go. The next one is What Happened to Miss Simone, which is about Nina Simone and her journey as a musical artist, but also as like a civil rights activist. And the third one is The Look of Silence, which is about a guy whose brother was like killed in a genocide, and the people who killed his brother are still in power. And it's kind of like a spiritual sequel, but you don't have to see the first one to the Killing Grounds. What was it called? The Killing something from last year. The Killing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm just embarrassing myself. I don't know, but it was with the Killing thing. The Killing thing from last year. It's kind of the sequel to that. So, which one are you going to go for? Well, I'm looking up what the Killing one is. Killing.
It's not the Killing
The
Fields,
Act
is
of
it?
Killing.
The
Act of Killing. That was the one from last year. So, but you don't have to see that
which
one.
country is it in?
Shit.
Is the Look of Silence?
Just a moment. Indonesia.
Indonesia. Okay.
The one last year was kind of from the perspective of the genocide committers, whereas this one's from like the perspective of the victims.
Wow, that sounds like a really horrifying combination of documentaries to watch.
Right.
I want to go with Cartel Land. Let's do that.
All right. Good deal. I'm glad you picked that one. I was very curious about that one as well.
Yeah.
So we will be back. Are we doing this? Should talk about this off air. Are we doing this next week, or are we going to wait 2 weeks and do this next one?
2 weeks. Let's do 2 weeks on this. So we're going to take next week off, and then the week after that, yeah, we'll be back.
Good deal. Cool. So we will be back in 2 weeks for Cartel Land. It's Oscar nominated. It's probably good.
Probably awesome.
Yeah. So we'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for watching. This is our listening. This is PT. Keep it real.
This is Jonathan. We'll see you next week.